Hello everyone. So I'll be teaching you technical communication and the subject code is KAS 401. Before, as usual, getting down into the deep of the concepts, I would like to start my lecture with a story. This story is about a corporate office where Mr. X happens to be the boss, Mr. Y the clerk, and there were other people as well. The timing was of recession, people were fired, the firing was going on just because of cost cutting, and the day was Saturday. Early in the morning, there was a call from Mr. X to Mr. Y, the clerk. In the hectic schedule, he called to the Mr. Y, and Mr. Y picked up the receiver. Said, "Good morning, sir." "Yeah, Mr. Y, why don't you come down to my cabin?" And he kept the receiver. Mr. Y, the clerk, was so embarrassed, puzzled, confused, and at the same time nervous. Considering that maybe this is my turn, the last day of the organization. Howsoever, having a hope of surviving in that organization, he piled up all the files and straight away moved on to the cabin of the boss. Knocked at the door of the cabin, and there was a mild voice from inside of the boss saying, "Yes, please, get in." The moment he entered the cabin, the scene was, the boss was completely lost in piles of files, trying to decide certain things. And Mr. Y, with nervous, stumbling legs, standing in front of the boss, just waiting for the kind of comments and statements he might have planned to share with Mr. Y. But he could not just recall, he was so much lost and engrossed in the file. After a while, recalling the presence of Mr. Y, Mr. X, the boss, said, "Hey, Mr. Y, would you mind? I'm quite busy. Let me connect with you later on. I'll make a call to you by evening this Saturday." And again, without any clarity, full of doubts, considering the last day of the organization, he again carried the same files straight away to his own desk. Whatever assignment was given in that particular week, he could not focus. Why? It's just because of the nervousness, the fear, considering, hey, how will I survive? What would happen to my family? How would I meet the two-time needs? Well, howsoever, he managed to pass on the day without really focusing on the assignments and waiting for the call of the boss. But the matter of fact, there was no call from the boss. Well, day passed on. With down, pale face, he reached his home. This small, cute child came running across the road, marking the presence of his father. "Hey, Dad, you're back." But he could not observe the cuteness, the innocence of that little child. Why? Again, what would be the financial situation if I am being fired? Well, howsoever, he entered the room, his wife, ready to serve him all kind of dishes and cuisine, just because he's back after a tedious, laboursome day. But he denied any kind of offerings, saying, "Hey, I'm not keeping well, let me relax. To max, if you want to serve me, give me a glass of water." Had a glass of water, sat on a chair and asked everyone not to disturb him, lost in his own imaginary mode, thinking what would happen if I am being fired. Well, fine. Howsoever, the Saturday passed on. The weekend, Sunday, all his family members were expecting they will be driving to some beautiful place, enjoying the Sunday, but the case was something different. He denied all kind of journey, sat all alone in the room, thinking about the possibilities that would come across on the Monday. Finally, Monday came. He again went to the office, waiting for the boss call and that final declarations that you have been fired. But not. Oh, howsoever, after 1 hour of his reach, there was a call from his boss. Hey, Mr. White, why don't you come down to my cabin? Again, he piled up all the files with very, nervous, uninterested look and style. He went down to the cabin, knocked at the door. There was a mild voice. Yes, get in. He entered the room, stood in front of the boss. Boss said, hey, Mr. White, it's a long time we never met. Why don't you have your seat? He was asked to sit. And after a while, boss said, hey, he called the peon and he asked him to serve a cup of tea to Mr. White. He was puzzled. What is happening? What is the plan of the boss? And then after a while, when the cup of coffee was served to him, he said, hey, Mr. White, there was a intimation from my boss, saying that Mr. White has been very sincere, hardworking, he should be rewarded. And keeping those statements in point of view, he planned an outing with Mr. White, saying that we'll have lunch together today. All the nervousness, the technicalities, the imaginary mood, the fear was shattered into pieces. He now breathed the relaxed mode. He felt, yes, now I am safe. Story ends here. What happened in the story? You know what? In the professional world where everybody is, hectic, lost in his or her assignments, nobody has time to justify whatever statement he makes. It is your own intellect, your knowledge. How do you infer the possible statement that is reaching you from different dimension and different direction in different hierarchy? What happened with the Mr. White? Just because he was not technically sound in communication, whole 3 days he lost. He could not focus in work. Can you imagine 3 days if an employee doesn't work, what kind of loss an organization is supposed to be bearing? My goodness, you just can't imagine. It is one employee, if the same kind of mindset all the other employees are having, crores and crores of loss would be there. So I am going to teach you that technique which is going to make you efficient, a proficient speaker, analyzer and communicator in the upcoming corporate world. Let me again focus on technical communication. So what is this technical communication? Have you ever imagined being a future technocrat? What made this Google, Microsoft and there are a number of other software industry, then to a new corporate in corporate world, there's always every year a new company comes down. From where do they get market? How are they able to penetrate into the market? Yes, the reason behind that is their communication, their research of the customer is very good. If Microsoft's software's products are so good, then the other company's survival should not be possible. But hey, what is the case? Every now and then there is a new company. Why? It's all about technical communication. It's all about how you are researching the communication process existing in multi-dimension. Right? So now, we will be dealing with introduction, definition of technical communication, features of technical communication, process of communication, and what is general communication. Features of general communication, difference between technical and general communication. So, as I have already introduced that it is not easy cup of tea, you need to master every bits and pieces of it. There are a number of concepts, Can you ever imagine that you might have been taught about litmus paper in chemistry lab? You might have been taught about a vernier caliper in the physics lab. But what happens? You need every time supervision, guidance by your faculty members, by the lab instructors. Why? Because every technicalities has a method, every technicalities has a process, every technicality has properties. Same is the case with technical communication. It is, it is having too many concepts that gradually will be unfolding in the upcoming class. Because this is the first lecture of technical communication, try to understand the importance of it. Fine? So now, technical communication, why you till now in the first year you were taught about general English. That was the first step towards technical communication. And again in the next semester you were taught about professional English, professional communication. That was the next step advancement towards the technical communication. And now it is technical communication. This is the last as far as executive syllabus is concerned about the technicalities that could have been shared, inculcated, transferred by the institution amongst these students. So now it is the high time you have to master during this course about the communication aspects. So now how, what are the methods, what are the concepts, what are the processes, that we will be gradually getting down into details. Obviously, as you might have been taught in the professional English, there is a sender. He tries to encode. He selects a channel. Then he transmits the possible message or the idea that he wants to. And there is a receiver. He decodes the message. And that message, again, the moment he decodes, he gives a response, and that response can be converted into feedback if the sender wills. What happened in the case of the story? In the story you might have inferred who was the sender. Sender was Mr. X, the boss. He encoded his possible intentions in a particular form of message through the, there was a telephone call from his side to the Mr. Y. But what happened? The receiver, Mr. Y, he had certain assumptions. He had a kind of influence in the existing environment. What was going on in the environment? There was firing going on. And he considered that whatsoever is happening, going on around in the organization may be having an impact on him. So he was full of imaginatory mode assumptions, and he could not focus on the real sender's message. He could not decode, he encoded and he could not decode it in the proper sense. And that was the reason why he gave a very bad response not straight away to the sender but to himself. He was badly in the impact of it. Fine. So this is the process. And across, see, if you really want to master communication, two things you should always remember. What are those two things? The first is the process of communication. This is the process of communication. And second thing you must remember is LSRW. These are the macro concepts on which the whole complete communication relies. Right? LSRW. What is LSRW? You must be a good listener. What is LS? S stands for speaking skills. You must have a good speaking skills. Obviously, it is said, right, that if you are not a good listener, you cannot be a good speaker, right? You need to be a good listener. All the inputs, I often say to my student, how a small newborn baby learns the language. There is no grammar teacher as such, right? Mother never says this is a noun, this is a pronoun, right? Or this is a verb. But still, the child is able to grab the different new words being uttered by the family members. He says ma. He says, if I get down to the one language that is Hindi, ma, pyas, bhuku. There are different kind of articulation and pronunciation by the small little child. And how he learns that language? Because first he listens to the mother and the other people who are there in his family member. So listening is the first very step towards mastering of the communication process. And second is speaking. You need to know how to speak that particular language efficiently. And the third stage is writing. And the fourth one is reading. Obviously, the moment you get down into the academic world, you read, you read different texts by different authors, trying to understand their own assumptions, their own orientation, their own concepts, their own ideas, and you try to learn from that. Whole knowledge industry, if I may say, rely on these two models. One model is process communication, the other model is the LSRW model. So these are the most two micro concepts on which the whole communication process relies. So if I try to define what is technical communication, Paule and Radon writes, communication is the act of transmitting an idea from one person to another. Communication always requires at least two people, the sender of the message and its receiver, as I have already drew on the above. And then another philosopher and theorist of communication defines, that is Davis, communication is the transfer of information and understanding from one person to another person. It is a way of reaching others with facts, ideas, thoughts and values. Right? Fine? So, technical communication definition is this. And upcoming all the classes across the semester, we will be dealing with this particular concepts. We will go down deep into different concepts, different deep micro concepts, and what are the methods, techniques, like report writing. If we focus on just the LSRW part of the model, then writing, report writing, letter writing. The moment anyone asks you to write a letter, you are always confused what kind of subject matter would we put, right? Because again, there is a strategy. You must know what kind of sentences are written in a subject matter, isn't it? You might be definitely confused. In subject matter, what is the case? We never use a sentence, we use phrases, right? To keep it short, crisp, and to the point, straight away, reaching the target, whatever the target audience is, whosoever is going to read your letter. It should be crisp, to the point. That is always a phrase, it cannot be a sentence. If you start writing a sentence, then what is the difference between a subject matter and the body of the letter? Right? Same is the case with report writing. The moment, definitely in your schooling days, your teacher might have asked you to prepare a report on different topics. What happened? You were puzzled. What to do, how to do, what are the components, what are the elements, right? So there is a structure. You need to work on those structure. There is a summary in the report writing. What kind of methods you will be adopting. Will that be a deductive method, inductive method, chronological method, spatial method, then there are other linear methods. You must know these concepts, the theory based on the four models that we have already discussed right now. Right? Speaking, oh my goodness, do you remember the first day while you were asked to come on the stage? Oh, definitely your legs might be shivering like anything, full of sweating in the cold, even winter days. Why? You were nervous to face the audience, right? So presentation skills is one of the other art. You cannot face the audience, right? And it's again the art. How, what, when, and in what amount, that will be taught to you in the upcoming classes. So reading. Obviously, your faculty members gives the lecture in 40 minutes or in 1 hour span, and he asks you to refer different texts, and you are nervous. There are so many texts on a given subject, which author to refer, one full book, how to go through the whole full book within 1 hour. So reading is a skill. Assimilation. Are you going to adopt the assimilation method? Are you going to adopt the churning method? Are you going to adopt the scanning method? Are you going to adopt the skimming method? You must know, and unless until you are made aware, you must decide beforehand getting down to any kind of action and activity. The path should be clear, the mindset should be clear, the orientation should be clear. More are you clear about what you are doing and how it is done, hey, guess what? Result will be in your favor. You will be definitely succeeding in whatever venture and the target you may be having. Right?